All right. Oh, okay, we're live. Good morning, everybody. Hi, it's Samantha Studebaker-Carl broadcasting to you live from beautiful Southwest Georgia. This is the Saturday Morning Mastermind, and I just wanted to say welcome, welcome, welcome. I have just lost my train of thought, so everybody jump out and introduce yourselves. Have a good morning.
There you go. Good morning, everybody. I was just messing with my settings. Seem to be having some technical difficulty all around here. Hey, I'm just so great to be here. You know, it's great to see everybody, and looking forward to the discussion today.
Morning, everybody. My name's Danielle DeLyons. I live out in Anaheim, California, and like Jason, I'm excited for today. Glad we're not having any technical difficulties today.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Can you hear? Okay, because my computer's been frozen up. My computer caught whatever Samantha's had a little bit ago. Okay. Wow. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Dan Smith, and I'm from Boise, Idaho. And we had a total eclipse of the moon this morning, but guess what? It was 100% overcast. Couldn't see it. So anyway, a little bit bummed out about that. But anyway, life's good, and welcome to the call.
Good morning, everyone. This is Catherine Clement. I'm here in Boulder, Colorado. And can you hear me? Yeah. And it's going to be a beautiful day here today. Just glad to be here. Want to apologize for not being here last week. We did have some technical difficulties. And actually, I want to put a little explanation on the Google Hangout page, or on the page from last week, because it was some malware and viruses on my computer that caused the malfunction, and I wanted to just let you guys know about it. So if you're experiencing some of those symptoms, you'll know what to look for on your computer. So thank you, everyone, for coming back, and looking forward to the discussion today. Yeah, absolutely. Post that in our community too, Catherine, because that was a major malfunction. We don't want anybody to be experiencing that if they can avoid it. And I apologize there. Right at the beginning, I lost my train of thought, and when we started this morning, it was right at the very minute before we were supposed to start, my screen just went completely black, and I was like, wait, what just happened? And I think it was I wasn't plugged in, and my screen adjusted its brightness or something, but it went completely dark, so I couldn't see anything, and that's kind of what threw me off there. So okay, so for those of you who are brand new to our Hangout, we get together every Saturday morning, and we study different personal development and leadership books and that sort of thing. And right now we're studying the book How to Win Friends and Influence People in the Digital Age by Dale Carnegie. And we are in, let's see here, part 4, chapter 3, which is Call Out Mistakes Quietly. And this particular chapter is about, it says, calling attention indirectly to someone's mistakes or missteps works wonders with people who may resent any direct criticism. And of course, that defines most people, right? So it talks about how to help people kind of improve their performance without going, you suck, you messed up bad. You know, it's helping people in a positive way, and versus just being, you know, critical, right? Because nobody likes to be criticized, and so that's what this chapter is about. But before we start, let me just welcome everybody who's hanging out on the event page. And by the way, I apologize for this weird shadow I have on me. I'll kind of duck down until it moves over. What was I just going to say? Oh, I was going to welcome everybody. Okay, so let me jump over here real quick. Okay, good morning, Donna. I sent you a link on Facebook if you can get to that. Good morning, Dan. Cassimo, morning. Christopher, good morning. Good morning, everybody. We're glad to have you on here. Catherine, let's see who else is said they're going to hang out with us this morning. Heidi, welcome. Lou. Christina's not going to join us this week. She's got some family in town. Welcome, John. Fabiana, it's good to have you guys. I'm really happy that you're on here with us. I know last week we had some mishaps.
Okay, good morning, Donna. I sent you a link on Facebook if you can get to that. Good morning, Dan.
Oh, hey, mute out, Don.
Christopher, good morning. Good morning, everybody. We're glad to have you on here. Catherine.
All right, I'm muting you.
Who else is so they're going to hang out with us this morning? Heidi.
There we go. Okay. All right. Sorry about that, guys. Let me see if I can move so you can see me a little better. How about there? Okay. What was I just going to say? Oh, okay. Everybody who is out there and you're on a mobile device, I posted the mobile watch link so that you can watch directly on YouTube. And then for the rest of you, so that we can see your comments, be sure and be on the event page. Go to SaturdayMorningMastermind.com. That will take you to our main event page because, of course, anytime somebody shares the event on their profile or on another page or something like that, it gives you the option to watch our hangout anywhere on the web. But if you want to be able to comment and so that we can see your comments, go to SaturdayMorningMastermind.com. That's our main event page. Okay, with that, let me go ahead and just let Donna jump out, introduce yourself, and then we can jump into this discussion.
Good morning, everyone. Happy Easter weekend. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Good morning. Good morning. Looking forward to the discussion there.
Okay, I'm going to try and move over here into the shade because the sun's it's moving and so the shadow's moving. Okay, everybody can see me better now? How's that? Okay, cool. Okay, so let's talk about this chapter a little bit. You know, what did you find was the most interesting or the most powerful lesson in this chapter? I mean, it shared a bunch of different stories. So share your thoughts on that, or we can just kind of start with why do you think it's important to, you know, not directly criticize somebody when they make a mistake? What do you guys think about that?
I'll jump out. Oh, Dan, go ahead. You go right ahead.
Go ahead, you're good.
I'm good. Okay. You know, I really appreciated this chapter because many times when somebody's pointing out our wrongs, it's all in the approach. Most people will recognize, not always, but a good chunk of the time, they're going to recognize they already messed up, screwed up. And by somebody else needing to criticize and point that out and further humiliate them many times, it serves no purpose. It doesn't correct the problem. It doesn't come to a positive way to fix the problem. And you know, I really loved each and every single one of the stories in here because they were fine examples of showing that, hey, we all make mistakes. We learn something from it. Now let's go forward and I'm going to give you another chance, or I'm going to give you an opportunity to correct that or learn from that. Imagine that if every time we made a mistake, we didn't have the opportunity to redeem ourselves or learn something from that and try again. How would we ever go forward, you know? And I thought about even like, I'll keep it simple too, when a baby's learning to walk, they fall and they hit things and they bump things, and what if we as a parent said, nope, you're not allowed to walk because you didn't get it right the first time? I mean, just something so simple as that, and that's life. And, you know, sometimes really bad things have to happen for good things to happen. And I'll let you have the floor, Dan. I know you got something really good to tell.
Oh, I don't know about that. First of all, I got a big confession. I'm the one that screwed the pooch and dropped the ball last week because I clicked on a link when I shouldn't have clicked on it. So that's my fault. And I'm man enough I got wide enough shoulders. I'm going to step up and admit it. So anyway, I apologize to everybody for doing it. But it's really interesting. When I read the chapter last week, I read it twice last week, and I had certain things that stood out to me last week, and then this week I just read it just before the hangout this morning, and some other things, stood out to me. But I mentioned several weeks ago that, and I read something recently, and I don't remember what I even read it in, but it's like if you had this really expensive computer, and you paid like a couple $1,000s for a computer, and I mean it's a precision instrument, and if you took a ball peen hammer and started beating on the thing, what kind of effect would that have on your computer? And what this article is talking about is when you directly confront somebody in that same way, that it's just like taking a ball peen hammer and just destroying your piece of equipment, because you're really tearing a person down. And all of us, we have this ego, and we have this pride that says that we want to be right, and we want to look good in other people's eyes. And so when you have a direct rebuke like that, and just a direct hit, is human nature and human tendency is just to dig in our heels, and it's like, you're not going to get anything out of me, because that's my nature. I got to protect my humanity, my human nature, and something that stood out to me last week, was I was just reading in a book about this lady, and I wrote about it last week, that had she'd been sexually molested by her father as a child, and so as a teenager, she's talking about all these different ways that she coped with life, and she became extremely hard and angry, and she felt like the whole world was pointing at her and laughing at her and judging her, and so she became the protector in her family, because if something happened, then her father would get mad, and then he would maybe smack her mother around, all this different, just awful stuff that was going on in her life, and explaining why that she turned out hard and mean and angry and everything, and but that lady's name's Joyce Meyer, and today she's a televangelist. I mean, she travels all over the world. She writes books. I don't know how many books she's written, and it's not so much that I follow her, but I have a couple of her books and enjoy her books, and today she helps other people that are in that same situation. But you can't always know what a person's going through and why they are, the way that they are, and the whole thing of judging other people and this really harsh, severe rebuke, that I even admitted a couple of weeks ago, I had a couple of employees in my life. One of them worked for me for over 10 years, and I resorted to yelling at the guy, because I got to the point where it's the only way I felt like I could get my point across to him. I really wanted to take a 2x4 and smack him with it. I mean, not just, hey, I'm human too, okay? But today he's one of my best friends, and we are really close friends. But it's good that he doesn't work for me anymore either. So, anyways, I'm just rambling now. I'll turn it over to somebody that's really got something important to talk about.
I think that's a good point about, we don't really know what's going on with the other person when they make a mistake. There's a part of the book in here, it says, in life, sometimes mistakes are the byproduct of extenuating circumstances. We don't always fail at work because of incompetence. We can fail because our hearts and mind are not engaged due to problems at home or elsewhere. The leader understands that mistakes and failures surface from all corners of life, and therefore should be treated and isolated and redeemable incidences instead of fatal flaws. And Roger Leidig put in a quote in here in the pre-mastermind discussion. He said, let's see, from the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, it says, seek first to understand and then to be understood. And so I think it's really important for us to keep that in mind, is that, you know, most people don't make mistakes because they are outwardly just not giving a hoot. I mean, there are some people that are that way, but a lot of times mistakes happen just because we've got something else going on in our head, you know, because there's stress in our lives, or there's family disturbances, or, you know, any number of things. It's like last week I couldn't jump on here because of some family drama that was going on that I had to work through, and that I had family that just kind of suddenly came into town, and there was all those things, and then we had all the mishaps with trying to get the hangout going, and it just wasn't happening that last week. So it was like, well, you know what, you know, sometimes stuff just happens, and you just got to work through it the best that you can. And when you call out somebody and criticize them for making a mistake that they're already aware of, it reduces their self-esteem. It makes them feel even worse than they already feel. So I think it's just a really valuable thing to be able to connect with a person on, you know, whatever's going on in their life, and then work through that difficulty, that, you know, whatever that mistake is. So that's my thoughts anyway. Up out there.
You know, everyone says that excuses are a dime a dozen, but sometimes when you understand, you know, why somebody did something, it makes all the difference in the world. You know, it's because we've all been in, you know, put in positions where we've done things based on circumstances at the time, you know, and we can look back years later and go, oh my gosh, I can't believe I handled that way, or, you know, whatever it was. But um, circumstances often force our hand sometimes, and like you said, you know, you don't know if that person has been up all night with an ailing parent or child, or, yeah, I mean, there's like so many things that can affect somebody's performance. So just to call them out harshly, or, you know, I mean, none of us have never made a mistake, so we don't really have the high ground that, you know, that we can take and just belittle someone. But some people, unfortunately, you know, that's kind of um, a lot of people are raised in very dysfunctional homes and situations, and they pick up poor communication skills. They don't know how to, you know, and here I'm taking the point of maybe somebody who's been belittled. Sometimes those people don't understand that they're even doing that. You know, like that's how they were raised, and that's just how it is, and they don't understand that there are other ways to communicate, or, you know, that you can call it out quietly. They think that if somebody messes up, you just, you know, tell them how it is, or whatever, you know. So you also have to take into consideration both ways. If you're needing to correct someone or guide someone, or if somebody's trying to guide you, um, it all goes back to the, you know, good old rule is just treat people how you would want to be treated, basically, because um, none of us would want to be called out and made, um, you know, put in the spotlight. And it's all right if we do it to ourselves, but for somebody else to do it, you know, it puts us in that armadillo position. You know, we just want to hide underneath our armor, and because we're all human, you know, our hearts get hurt, and so I love this story. There's a story in the book about a cat burglar being caught, and the president woke up, and there was somebody stealing money out of his wallet, and he wound up giving him money as a loan, you know, but he basically just like observed. I don't know how he did it. I wouldn't have reacted that way. I can already tell you. I know, because I've had somebody break it into my car outside, and I've heard them, and I reacted way different, I can tell you. But the president woke up, and he just asked the guy, you know, that he told him he would appreciate it if he didn't steal that, the watch or the something that he had been given, and once the guy read it and realized who he was stealing from, you know, they had a conversation, and lent him the money, and it was really cool. And I heard a similar story not so long ago about a couple that the woman woke up in the wee hours of the morning and heard something, and her husband got up and somebody was abducting their child. Like the person was walking across the front yard with the child, their little girl, and the father just started walking along beside him and said, what are you doing? And I know you want to take her, but I really need you to leave her here with me. I mean, he was so calm. I would have been like whacking that guy. Who knows what I would have done? That's my kid. But but this guy was just so cool. And then the guy gave up the kid, and then they had him arrested. They called the police. So it's good to be able to keep your calm. I'm good about keeping calm in like nursing emergency health situations. But somebody stealing my kid, forget it, man. There's no way I can be like that calm. But maybe, well, I'm not even going to say that. I'll shut up now. Okay, bye.
I think I heard something about that same story, but I don't remember the circumstances or exactly how he handled it either, but that's a good example. I wish that we would remember that one or more about it. Does anybody else remember that story? Seems like it was maybe in the news or something. I don't know. Well, Dan Sissick put a comment on our event page, so let me go ahead and read that real quick. He says, also remember how you feel when someone points out what you did wrong and a wrong way. And how does that make you feel? Then you turn around and do the same thing. How does that help them, or you for that matter, to learn how to build others up and edify them so that people will want to do that for you? And that's such a great example, Dan, because what we're talking about here is kind of that, being the leading by example. Because, well, obviously you don't want people to do that to you, so it's the golden rule. But then at the same time, if you want to encourage people to have better behavior, as leading by example is the key with that one, particularly. And here's a good example. I was with a company a couple years ago, and I was with them for quite a while. And one of the things I just highly respected about the leaders was the fact that they would help people learn lessons based on, they wouldn't call that person out individually, but they would mention the situation and share the best way to have handled it, or a better way of doing it, or any number of things without actually naming that person. So everybody got to learn from the lesson, but that person who made the mistake got to save face. And I thought that was just a powerful method of leadership. And then one of the other things that he talked a lot about was to share a lesson is to actually tell a story that may or may not even be a real story. It could be a fictional story, or it could be, a story you hear or something along that lines, where you share a mistake that someone made and share the lesson that should have been learned from it, and then that helps other people to learn that same lesson. I think that was just really powerful. What do you guys think?
Yeah, something that came up in my mind this morning as I was rereading this chapter was I was in the first company that I was in years ago, and leaders in that company, and I remember them talking about this a number of different times, but it's basically called a third-party rebuke. And so, one leader would have his group, a huge group there, but he would call in another leader, and then that leader could come in and lay out a scenario, kind of like what you was talking about, Samantha, share a story, but in the process of sharing the story, that it was set up in such a way that the people who heard it would identify themselves and say, yeah, I guess I'm the jerk, that you're talking about, and so then the particular leader whose group that was, that he or she, didn't have to be the person rebuking the group, because it was this outsider coming in and doing it, And so it's just a way of laying it out that, hey guys, you're screwing up here, and I think that you can do better. In fact, I know that you can do better, and that it was a way of laying out a scenario that people would identify that, hey, gosh, I'm probably the jerk you're talking about here, you know. And then another thing that popped in my mind was the school teacher that had to leave the room and picked out the most unruly child and left them in charge, and this peer pressure type of thing of you know, appealing to the higher nature of the child, that, you know, you're the only one I can trust, so I need for you to keep order in the room while I'm gone for 5 minutes. So anyway, that, you know, just a couple of thoughts that came to my mind this morning.
That is so clever. That sounds like something I would do with my kids, you know. I mean, I only had 2 of them, but if I had like a whole herd, you know, I know I said that. I shouldn't say herd, but you know what I'm saying. If I had a whole slew of kids, like, you know, 6 or 8, that's exactly what I would have done. It's been like the one that causes the most problems, put him in charge. Although, I don't know, it may not work the same with kids. They all might just conspire together to cause even more havoc. I mean, who knows? But in a classroom setting, I think that's super clever. And, you know, and it talks about that kind of the peer pressure thing in here. It says, it's talking about, let's see here, at times it isn't possible to influence others by modeling behavior, either because you aren't with the people you are trying to influence or because you actually aren't immersed in what it is they're doing. And so then it says, you know, how do we influence behavior then? And it gives a couple of different points. And it talks about kind of that positive peer pressure and, you know, and appealing to, like we've talked about in previous chapters, is appealing to the better good and appealing to that noble, you know, feeling inside of people. And but we can read those 3 things. It says, identify those in the group, team, family, or community who have the most influence over others and get them to model the behavior you want to promote. 2, develop a community approach to the behavior by appealing to the broader good. Peer pressure goes a long way towards influencing the thoughts and actions of individuals. And 3, make any changes possible to the resources available or the environment to make the new behavior and mindset easy to adopt. And that 3rd one, where it talks about making the changes to the environment, in there earlier in the story, it talks about how back in, what was it, World War II, and all of the women had gone into the workforce, and, you know, they took over all the men's jobs. When all the men came back, the men got the higher paying jobs, and so there was all this, you know, resentment, particularly in the one industry what they were talking about was the restaurant industry. And so the women who had been cooks had been demoted to waitressing, and then all the cooks got to be the men. And so there was all this animosity between them, and they were having all this discord, and it was causing all kinds of dissonance inside of the restaurant industry. And you know, because they couldn't communicate with each other, they're so upset with one another, even though, you know, it wasn't their fault. You know, it's just the way that the world worked out. But it was one of those things where you could have taken the time to go and teach interpersonal skills and do some team building activities and all of those kinds of things. But if you want like an instant result, they went and they just changed the way that, you know, the waitresses and the cooks communicated with each other by, you know, literally making it so they didn't have to verbally talk to one another. And I thought that was a super powerful thing. You know, I know, Catherine, you kind of mentioned, you know, that you waitressed for a number of years, and so you're real familiar with that thing. And the spindle thing that you know, you put the order on there and then it goes to the cook, so you don't actually have to talk to that person. And isn't it interesting how when you can actually take the communication and make it so that it is just very, I don't even know if there's no emotion in it, you know? Because like you can even say something to a person and have it be as neutral as you possibly can of a statement, but if you put an inflection on one word or another word, or you have a look on your face or whatever, is that all of a sudden that can make that other person feel offended. And so I think that's where a lot of the problems were in that industry. And so when they were able to just take all of the emotional and the verbal communication out of it, it made it so that everything ran so much more smoothly. And even today, you know, in the restaurant industry, now that it's all electronic and all of that kind of thing, is that, you know, that makes it so much more effective than what it was when you had all that discord between the employees. So I thought that was a really interesting story. I feel like I'm like talking for the whole hangout. So somebody else jump.
I like the other point too, Samantha, where they were talking about identifying the leader of the pack, so to speak, in the group that had the most influence. And that was something that I had learned a long time ago when I would go to do presentations. I was with a company where I sold a product, and it was a legal insurance. And so I'd seen situations where I'd go in unprepared when I was brand new, and whoever influenced that whole room, the way they behaved or their opinion of what was going on dictated the entire group of people. So you may lose the whole room. And I had that happen, and it was crushing. And yet I went back and I reviewed and I learned that key thing. You identify who controls things or influences, and if you can appeal to their higher level, you own the room, because then you get them to model the behavior you're looking for. And that's exactly what it said here. It kind of talked about that too in respects to John Maxwell's book, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership Under the Law of the Picture. Absolutely one of the best books on leadership that you can ever read about how to correctly influence leadership. And the story in there, I don't want to steal a lot of the time, let somebody else bring that out, but just one of the thoughts that came to mind is I've had situations like that. So definitely this is a very good advice in the chapter.
There's some great points, Danielle. I think that is just like such a ninja technique, these leadership tips that we're learning, to be able to look at things, look at a situation differently, and see the underlying causes, so that we can help people, help our audience understand our message better and take down those walls. Anything that we can do to do that is going to help us in our own lives, kind of grease the way and make things, smooth things over for us. And wow, I don't know if I was in the situation with you where I lost the audience, I would just been crushed. So, I mean, gosh, that must have been really, really difficult. But that's, kudos to you for going back and figuring it out and making it something that you can learn from and grow from. Man, everyone's having such great points. I hesitated to chime in. I was just wanted to bring up, though, like Samantha said, the emotional factor. If we can take that out of it, if we're able to do that, then I think that can, help us to calmly see where we can actually do the most good and help the person that we're trying to affect. It's I think it's important. I kind of believe that the way we do one thing is kind of the way we do everything. So I think if we find ourselves, dealing with people's mistakes in a harsh manner, then we need to kind of take a look at how we also talk to ourselves, because it's very possible we could be doing the same thing to ourselves. And I like that example of how they went into the diner, and what it took was, changing the environment, and how they did that was they set up a system for everyone to use. And that really, you can almost in the story feel the change, feel the levity, and feel the weight off of the shoulders of all those employees that were involved. They, probably going to work every day, they were probably already upset, like, oh my goodness, it's going to be another one of those days. But as soon as they had that system and something to rely on, something to, some sort of checks and balances, it really changed, it changed everything for them. One last thing, I guess it's all about being effectual with the person you're trying to confront about their mistake. Because if we're caught up in our emotions, and it's just a knee-jerk reaction or habit to to handle things that way, that can be something that's causing problems in our own life on a regular basis. And you know, the mistakes we're seeing in everyone else, you know, might be just a way of thinking that we have control over and we can change, and that just that one little thing can make such a big difference, not only in our lives but also in anyone that we come in contact with. So that's really what I wanted to say, and I think you're totally right. I like that example that Dan gave. I'm sorry, I'm a little scatterbrained right now, but I like the example Dan gave about the classroom. I don't know if I would if I could give that much responsibility to someone, but that's very interesting. You know, if we end with, you know, or even begin the conversation with, you know, with our expectations of the person and our belief, and letting them know that, you know, we care about them and we love them, we believe in them, and we know they can do better. You know, it gives you more of it kind of allows you to step into your power, and gives you the opportunity to actually really have an effect and help the person. So I think that's something we should all strive for. And you know, some people would think that, you know, acting in these ways, you know, could be like, you know, changing who you are just to please someone else, but it's really changing yourself, so that, again, you have more effect in your environment, and you're going to have more joy out of life when you see that you have those types of results. So that's what I wanted to say. Thanks for the time.
Real quick there, I would like to, can you hear me there? I was thinking there, as each one of you were talking, you know, on our jobs, you know, we can relate to a lot of things on our jobs. And just this past week, well, last week, well, anyway, they had a meeting at work, and our system has to run smoothly because of just the operation of dealing with people and all that good stuff. And one guy spoke of it, and sort of relates to some of what everybody said here. Everybody touched in on that, and my mind was just going back to that, and I was like, wow, how ironic on our jobs, how things are. And it seems like there's always got to be that one that wants to just disturb the whole ship, so to speak. And then they got around to asking the question, you know, does anybody have a solution to this problem? Actually, it was apparent that there was a problem, you know, definitely a problem. I said, well, the only thing I know to do is, they says, whenever there's a problem, you know, if you can't come with a solution, then just leave it alone and just, you know, study it a little bit more until, because if you do bring a problem on a job or whatever, you know, it's good to bring out a solution to that problem and discuss that concern, and find that like I said, that common ground where everybody can come together, and because you still got to communicate. It's not like back in the day jobs, you got to communicate with one another, you know, so especially when you're dealing with customer service. Okay, appreciate it.
I got a couple thoughts here, and maybe kind of go down a different rabbit trail here. I'm going to read this one point again. Samantha read it earlier, but it's point number 2 on page 189. It says, develop a community approach to the behavior by appealing to the broader good. Peer pressure goes a long ways towards influencing the thoughts and actions of individuals. And just a thought that, you know, the name of this book is How to Win Friends and Influence People. And peer pressure does go a long ways towards, you know, like we've talked about, the broader good, or the greater good of humanity, so to speak. But here's something that has popped into my mind, is that sometimes the leader actually has to go against peer pressure and actually lead. And yeah, I know from my own life and my own experience that that's been a stumbling stone, or a, you know, wall for me personally to get over, because, you know, my family, there's nobody in my family that relates to the way that I think. You know, I mean, I think different, okay? And all my family thinks in terms of having a job, and I don't think in terms of having a job. I think in terms of owning a business. And to step away from the crowd or to stick your head above the crowd wants to throw tomatoes at you. So sometimes you have to, you know, I have a confession that I read, and it's for the purpose of programming the way that I think, and that is to lose the herd mentality. And in my early days, I was a biker, and the bikers think in a certain way, and I had to step away from that and become different from my biker friends, and I became a Christian. But as a Christian, I look at most of the Christians that I know, and I don't want to be like them. So I have to lose the biker mentality, and I have to lose the Christian mentality for the most part, okay? And so if you're going to win friends and influence people, sometimes you have, well, there's an old saying, if you want to be successful, observe the masses and do the opposite. Okay, because you have to, you know, the fish are all swimming one direction, and as a leader, a thought leader, you actually have to swim the opposite direction sometimes. And so, you know, I'm just bringing out a point here, and you know, I'll listen to other people's opinions of what I'm talking about. If you know, hopefully you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely, Dan. You know, and as a multiple business owner, you know, I know exactly where you're coming from, because I mean, you have to lead by example, and that's kind of the key. You know, and you know, we've all kind of mentioned this, and you have that, you know, that quote that we always hear: "Be the example that you want to see in the world," and that's exactly what you have to do. Is because, you know, here's a good example. You know, my husband, when we had our trucking company, and before we had any employees, my husband was very proud of the work that he would do. You know, he always made sure that he was there on time with the load in good shape. It didn't matter hell or high water, he was going to get it there no matter what, right? Well, when we bought a couple of trucks and we had employees, when we took those employees on, he had this really high expectation from them to be exactly the same thing. It was like the mission of our company was, you know, it's going to be there on time no matter what. You know, kind of like what is the company? I don't know, UPS or FedEx. One of those ones is just like, you know, we'll get it there. You know, I don't care what happens. And you know, because he had that expectation, and he led by example, because he wasn't just saying, here, go and do this. He was out there in the dirt doing the same thing on the side of the road, fixing breakdowns, making it happen regardless of the situation. And because he was doing that and he was expecting that from our employees, they did the same thing. It was, you know, it's that whole kind of peer pressure thing, if you will. I mean, and it's the positive peer pressure, you know, because I mean, it can go both ways, just like what Danielle was saying when she was talking about the audience that was following the one person who had a negative attitude, and that's negative peer pressure. Whereas, you know, when you have a positive attitude and you're working towards a greater good, that positive peer pressure can influence people in a positive way, and that's what we're all after, right? It's just to help make the world a better place by expecting more out of people and expecting them to be what they're capable of versus, you know, being less than, right? You know, but then at the same time, we can't sit here and criticize people and hope they're going to be the best they can be. We have to lead by example. We have to, you know, tell stories in such a way that it helps them to realize, oh, okay, well, I made a mistake, and you can recover from it. I mean, that's super powerful. So those are my thoughts on that.
Yeah, that goes along with at the top of page 188. It talks exactly about that, Samantha, about, you know, leaders have this fantastic tool for themselves, and all they have to do is model that same behavior. How can you go out and tell other people to behave a certain way, and this is what you're supposed to do, and you're not doing it yourself? And so what an example your husband has led, and I've seen that many times in the workforce, is, you know, we always appreciate it on jobs or even in the industry a lot of us are in the home-based industry, when you saw a leader, you know, if there was a, say, a competition or some kind of a bonus, and it was about recruiting or selling the most of the product or whatever it might be, if you saw the leader of the team out there working just as hard and bringing in, not just sitting back and telling everybody else what to do, what a difference that made in getting everybody excited and say, oh, they're out in the trenches with me. Let's work even harder. We're going to go even further, and it does. It helps everybody go further. You're going to have better quality people that are united with one another.
Most definitely. And going back to what you said, Jason, I think it's really important to take these opportunities when you're trying to guide someone to also look at your responsibility in that. Like what maybe wasn't your communication clear about, or policies, or whatever, that might have left room for the error that was made. Sometimes it's just bad policy or bad communication, or it's a stupid rule that doesn't need to be followed. Sometimes that's true too. You just sometimes you just need to change things, and it's important as you're modeling. I mean, obviously, if you're in a business with someone and something happens and it has to be addressed, that's one thing. But there are sometimes situations where the thing that you want someone to change the most about themselves, instead of telling them that, however wonderfully you wind up wording it, sometimes it's better just to go home and be more of that. Whatever you want that person to be, you need to go home and be more of that. And then you'll see it show up in them. It's really strange how that works. As we work on ourselves and we develop skills in ourselves, they just, we're all one, so it just kind of morphs out into other people without even having to say it sometimes. And I just had a long conversation with my son last night, actually, very much along these lines, because he continues to run into the same scenario over and over and over, and I was trying to tell him that, and the way I said it was that, this is what I tell myself when I keep running into the same scenario. It's not like pointing any fingers or anything. I'm just telling you what I would tell myself. I'd have to look at that scenario and say, okay, if you take all the emotion and all of the everything out of that and you compare all these different scenarios, what's the common thread? It's people not being in integrity, people not showing up like they need to, and that keeps showing up. So I would have to look at my own life and say, where am I not showing up? Where am I not being in integrity? Maybe not. Maybe I'm in total integrity with everybody else, but maybe I'm not in integrity with myself. Maybe there's things that I think I'm hiding that, that I'm not. So, you can't hide things from yourself. So I think it's important as leaders that that you take responsibility, that some of that stuff is a mirror to you, and but like you said, don't judge yourself harshly either. You want to have the same compassion with yourself that you would have with your son or your daughter or your loved one.
It's such a great bathroom. Oh, we got, okay, there we go. We had an echo there for a second. That's such a great point, because I mean, when you do that and you say, okay, this is what I would do, this is what I would tell myself in this situation, it comes through differently. And and like when Dan was talking about the third party calling out the mistake, that can be even more effective. And that's kind of like why kids tend to listen to other people in the family versus their parents necessarily. Sometimes they'll listen to grandma more, or they'll listen to their aunts and uncles, or that sort of thing, because it's like it's not coming directly from the person who would make them feel bad, if you will. But I wanted to give another example. Is you know, when I had my pet business, of course, one of the things that I really strove for was high quality and best care and all of those kinds of things. And you know, I had a situation one time where I was kind of concerned about the quality that one of my employees was putting out, you know. And instead of going to her and saying, you know, no, why aren't you doing a better job, or why aren't you this, or why aren't you that, you know, I kind of went around the problem, if you will. I addressed it in a completely different way. And it's kind of like this, you know, where it's talking about call out mistakes quietly, is that, excuse me, I got something in my eye. Instead of saying what's going on with this problem, is I went to her and I was like, hey, you know, is everything okay, you know, with you at home? And do you have, you know, something going on that's, you know, bothering you, you know? And I kind of, you know, where it talks about in here, is there may be something else going on in their lives, right, that may be causing whatever the issue was. So I talked to her as I was concerned for her emotional well-being. I talked about, you know, I asked her about her family, you know, how things were going, and you know, and of course she mentioned something about what was going on at home, and I was like, okay, you know, because I was just really concerned, because I know how much you strive to do such a wonderful job at, you know, here at work, and do such a good job at taking care of these pets and making them beautiful. And I just noticed it was just kind of less than as good as it normally is. And I thought, well, maybe something's going on with you. So it's like I took that whole focus and put it on them in a whole nother light. But yet, you know, we kind of addressed the issue I really wanted to address, but by focusing on her well-being and being caring about what was going on in her life, she realized that, you know, I wasn't just sitting here criticizing her. I was saying, hey, you know, I know something's going on with you, because I know this is not how you would normally be. This is how, you know, I know that you strive for awesomeness. So, you know, that was one thing that I did, and that actually made a really big difference. So it was like, sometimes just addressing things from a completely different angle, whatever that issue happens to be, is try and find something else that's going on with that person, and then just kind of mention the thing that is the mistake, if you will, you know? I don't know. My thoughts.
My wife is a nurse, and she works with a lady that's extremely professional. And in the last couple of weeks, she's not so much screwed things up, but just hadn't got things done, you know. And her daughter's best friend, her daughter's like 16, 17 years old. Anyway, her daughter's best friend has like brain cancer, and they just found out, you know, that she was in a position where they sent her home, say, we've done everything you can, and it's just a matter of time, you know. And so, yeah, you know, it's just a situation that you never know what's going on in another person's life, you know, that, you know, where her mind is normally focused 100% on what she's doing. And, you know, the fact is that her mind's someplace else right now. So, you know, just giving people a little bit of leeway there, you know. And there is, I mean, not get real personal here, but there is a scripture passage that talks about if somebody, you know, uses the word terminology, sins against you, to go to them privately and talk to them. You know, there's like 3-step scenario laid out, but the first step is just to go to them privately and talk to them. You know, try to hash things out, and, you know, lays out a scenario for the next steps. You know, but, you know, like I said earlier at the very beginning, we're all human. We all have ego. You know, nobody wants to get their ego stepped on, or you know, just blatantly smacked around, you know, verbally or whatever. And yeah, just learning how to treat people you know, in a different light, you know, to take care of their needs and look out for other people's, you know, needs, and not to hurt them. So anyway, I'm just rambling on right now. I'll let somebody else take the floor.
You know, through my studies, I've been trying to make a lot of these changes and make them become habits, and I've noticed that it's something that I have to do by changing the underlying my underlying emotional state. And the phrase pleasing personality keeps popping into my head, and that's I've been trying to cultivate that. And you know, we're talking about dealing with people when they're making mistakes, and we may go through days or weeks or even months without having to come to having to deal with that. And so we don't get the practice of actually handling that the correct way. um, but when we're dealing with ourselves, we do. And so for me, I've been trying to make a change to have that pleasing personality, so that my knee-jerk reactions are more to the funny side of things, rather than the, oh great, now another problem type of a situation. And recently I started playing pool again, playing 8-ball again, and I'm not really that great, and I'm always missing shots, and a lot of them are pretty easy shots that I can get upset with. And so this last weekend I was playing, and I've been trying to cultivate a pleasing personality. So I decided to check myself every time I made a prepared myself kind of every time I made a shot that was any time I made a shot or missed a shot, excuse me, that I would, instead of being upset, I would immediately smile. Just immediately smile, and that would, because smiling actually changes, has a great effect on changing your mindset. It tells your brain that you're in a good mood. If you're in a place where you should be happy, your mind's saying, well, why aren't you smiling? If you're not smiling, it's like, well, you're not indicating that you're happy. So, but if you just go ahead and force a smile on yourself, you will actually make a change in your mindset, and if you go with it, you will start, being happy. So I did this. I did this while I was playing pool, and boy, I was missing a lot of shots. So I got a lot of practice at it, and at the end of the day, when I was leaving, I got one of the nicest compliments from someone. Someone walked up to me, and as they were leaving, they tapped me on the shoulder and just looked at me and said, you are a real pleasure. And I was taken back by that. I was like, wow, that must be, because they were just watching me play. And I guess my reactions of not being upset and actually finding the amusement in the situation had that effect on them. So, I just think that was an example of, really, something that we can do proactively before we, to prepare ourselves for situations that might put us into a different emotional state, that we might have those negative reactions. So I just want to bring that up. Thanks a lot.
Great point, Jason. Mindset is everything. I'm a pool player too, so we'll have to pick up and play pool sometime. Mindset, that was like my last thing I was going to bring up is, when you do have to have a conversation with someone, don't forget to set your intention for that conversation. Don't go into it thinking, oh, we're gonna, I'm gonna try to like smooth this over, but it's gonna go, and you can't go into it like that. You just set your intention that it's going to be a beautiful conversation, and you're going to come out on the other side knowing that other person better, and having a closer, more intimate relationship with them. And just remember that everybody you speak to is you. So we tend to be our harshest with ourselves, I think, than we do other people. Most people, I think, tend to be harsher with themselves. So just, just be kind. Just always be kind to people. And it doesn't do any good to hurt someone's feelings. It doesn't make business better in the future. I mean, it just doesn't come to any good. So just find a way. And if you're too emotional at the time, if it's something that has really triggered you, spend some time with yourself and find out why that's triggering you so deeply. and that will help put you into a more calmer and balanced position to go speak to that person. And if you're not there, if there's any way you can put off the discussion, then put it off until you can find that balance within yourself. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I'm so glad to be back this week, and we'll see you next week.
I just got one really quick point here, Jason, what you was talking about, retraining your brain, and something that W. Clement Stone did. He was a business partner with Napoleon Hill, and had hundreds of millions of dollars. And one of the things that he trained his brain to do was that when he came across a problem, he would immediately see, that's good, that's great. And then he would begin to look for the good, And Napoleon Hill writes, in every adversity lies a seed of an equivalent or a greater benefit, And that's what W. Clement Stone did to train his brain. Any problem he came across, that's good, that's fantastic, And then he would set about looking for some seed of greatness that would come out of that. So I'm done. Thanks, everybody, for coming this week. Appreciate it. Had a good time.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Dan. And I'm pretty much done here too. I'm having such a good time, and everyone brought up such great points. Just to add to that real quick, I noticed the other day how I was engaging conversations with people, and we would be talking about something that was relatively upbeat, but then it seemed like a lot of the conversations would end with the phrase, "But what sucks was," or "But what stinks is," or "But and so that's another thing that I'm trying to change, and instead I'm switching it with the phrase what's great is, what's great about it is, and really trying to get that phrase in my head a lot more, and supplant the negativity with the positive. So that's my 2 cents. Again, thanks for being here, and thanks for everybody for coming out and commenting and everything. So pass it on to Samantha, I guess. Huh?
Well, Danielle and Donna, if you have any last thoughts, go ahead and jump out before we wrap up for today.
Just a great discussion. It's great to get us all back here today. Nothing else to add. Wow, the last thoughts with you, Jason and Dan, incredible.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I think the listening part, like just listening to each and every one of you here this morning was just, you could just pull so much from just by listening to the conversation. And offline, same way, work, online business, job, vice versa, / part-time, whatever. If we learn, and this is why I don't say anything that I don't practice. That's been my lifelong learning, is listening. And I laugh at my own self, So if you think, yeah, it's good to laugh at yourself, that's a good thing, because like Jason just said, it puts your mind in a happy place, because we make mistakes, but we learn from our mistakes. And I enjoyed this passage, of reading this passage. I didn't know we were going to be on the same passage as last week, but I think that's because we didn't have the discussion. But I enjoyed reading it, and I enjoyed each one of his comments there this morning, and trust you all have enjoy. That's it for me.
Thanks, Danielle. Donna.
Okay, guys, thank you so very much. Everybody had so many wonderful comments, and yeah, I'm absolutely glad to be back here again this week. And of course, for those of you watching, thank you for participating in our discussion this morning. Thank you for adding your thoughts. Thanks for hanging out with us. Go ahead and join us in our community if you haven't done so already. Jump to mindsetmasterycollective.com, and that is our Google Plus community. And of course, you can always find the Saturday Morning Mastermind by coming to SaturdayMorningMastermind.com. like this video, subscribe to our channel, follow our page, all those good things. And we'll see you again next week, this time 10 a.m. Eastern, Saturday mornings at SaturdayMorningMastermind.com. Have a great day, and we'll see you next week. Bye for now.